What happened to good bud? Why is so much of it just all looks, but no substance, no flavor, no funk? Yeah, you may feel it, yeah, you may get an effect, but in this day and age, I would assume that that's just a gimme. Now, when it boils down to it, it's really preference, of course, it's subjective. But one thing I have noticed is the quality of flour has gone downhill. And in this episode, I'm gonna go over a few reasons why and how we can maybe flip to the other side of things and get that dank. Stay tuned.
Like we always do about this time.
This video is for educational purposes only, YouTube. This video is brought to you by AC Infinity. Now, whether it be air control, air quality, lighting, or your tent itself, or the entire kit, AC Infinity has got you locked down, and they continue to innovate time after time again with just amazing products. Now, their products go very fast, well, because they're in high demand. Supply and demand is a real thing, and when you got a supply that's as great as this, you better jump on it quick. And when you do, make sure you use CLtv at checkout, and you'll save some money on your order. My name is Rob, and this is CLtv, and we talk all things herb. Today in particular, we're going to be talking about flour. Now, in the past few years, I've been traveling a lot when it comes to this industry and this space, going to events from MJ BizCon, the High Times Cannabis Cup, Hash Bash, Green Street Festival in LA. Now, the reason I feel I need to speak on this is my time in the commercial space, I was able to see a lot of things from a different perspective. And being a home grower and having my days in the past doing the trap stuff, I was able to see things from a different light, and especially going to recent events that I feel normally were totally community-based that now are shifting and pivoting into a different vibe completely, in my opinion. The more popular the plant becomes, the more industrialized it becomes. It's just is what it is. It becomes commoditized, and what a lot of us were in love with in the past may not transition into this industrial market. Why is it that it seems like as things advance, the flour does not come with it? Now, rosin is super tasty. A lot of these infused pre-rolls, even where they spray it with terpenes, these oftentimes are tasty for most people.
Not me.
But it seems like we're getting further and further away from what I would say is quality flour. Pretty flour is all we're looking at nowadays. The looks, and I get that's important. A lot of people will eat with their eyes too. And when you're at a retail store or even you're just checking out the bag, the first thing you see is the flour. So I get that being a factor. But when it boils down to it, there's no substance to the substance. It seems like one thing people are leaning on more than anything is looks, yield, and THC. But when we're talking about quality herb, terpenes and flavonoids are a big factor.
You know, it's all Terp Nation, you know? It's all that Terp rhyme, you know? It's like, for your mind.
So if you don't already know about them, let's just quickly discuss terpenes and flavonoids and the importance that they play in herb. Now, these often contribute to the unique aroma and potentially flavor profiles. More importantly, they interact with cannabinoids like THC and CBD to enhance their effects, a phenomenon known as the entourage effect, which we'll touch on here in a little bit. As we're flavonoids, these are the compounds that you're going to be finding the flavor in, hence in the name, flavonoids. This can also contribute to the pigment and overall sensory experience in the plant. Now, these have been known to have anti-inflammatory, neuroprotective, and anti-cancer properties, complementing the effects of the cannabinoid terpene. Now, if this is all subjective, we'll say science is science, and some people disagree with this, but there's been studies that have shown this to be true. For example, there was a study done called Terpenes and Entourage Effect by Russo EB, and this suggests that the individual terpenes such as myrcene, limonene, linalool have been studied for therapeutic properties, including anti-inflammatory, anti-anxiety, and sedative effects. Now, these studies suggest that the plant alone isn't doing this with THC, that it's an entourage effect. It's more than just the THC, it's the cannabinoids as a whole. And we're specifically talking a lot about terpenes and flavonoids in this case. Now, flavonoids such as canephlavin A or canephlavin B have been shown to possess anti-inflammatory properties, which are unique to herb in particular, which is amazing. Then we get to the synergistic effect. This suggests that various components of the plant, the cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids, work together synergistically to produce a combined effect that's greater than the sum of individual effects. This implies that the strain's overall effect, including potency, therapeutic potential, is all influenced by a complex group of chemicals, not just one. Now, some genotypes just really don't have this characteristic expression. They don't really come out with strong terpenes unless potentially they're agitated into something like a hash or an extract. That may come out a little bit stronger, of course. But when it boils down to it, not all flour is made the same. But some flour does have the potential to be slapping and having that great, funky, aromatic terp that you're looking for, but some things you're doing in the garden may potentially be hindering that. This is where something like vapor pressure deficit really plays a factor. Maintaining your temperature and humidity to not have too much pressure on those trichomes and the terpenes as a whole is definitely going to be important. Trying to maintain a solid range that doesn't fluctuate too high or too low is definitely going to be a factor that'll help you maintain this as well. Ideally, at the day tab, you'll want to range between 68 and 86 Fahrenheit. High temperatures, specifically over 86 Fahrenheit, can cause terpene evaporation, and that is definitely something you do not want. Too high a humidity can also lead to mold and mildew, as where too low of humidity can lead to accelerated terpene loss as well. So finding that balance is extremely important if you want to find success with your flower. Now when it comes down to it, the drying conditions, this one may be a little subjective. I've had a lot of people who swear by the 60-60 rule, meaning 60% humidity and 60 degrees temperature, but that seems to be a very debatable subject. Now, it's crucial to keep your temperatures low to prevent evaporation of terpenes, of course, but ideal temperatures are going to be between 64 to 68. Higher temperatures during drying can significantly reduce your terpenes overall, affecting both the flavor and therapeutic effects, and that's definitely something that if you're into consuming herb, you're going to want to focus heavily on. Also, your humidity. You want your drying room to be relatively consistent with that humidity. Some people swear by 60%. On average, I usually have my room 55%, 50% humidity. I'm not trying to speed up or slow down that drying and curing process. I'm trying to get a nice natural drying and curing process that's not too slow and takes too much time because, again, we can see the degradation of terpenes, and that's something that we really don't want to see. Now, curing versus drying, sometimes these things happen around the same time. This is a very subjective, debatable topic, of course, but oftentimes when I'm in my curing process, I'm kind of in my drying process at the same time. I'm not going to dry my bud out to the point where it's too dry and I'm putting it into my jars and it's not going to be having any room for curing. It's dried out at that point. But I'm also not going to put it in there where it's too moist and I'm potentially running into mold, mildew, or issues with that plant. Trichomes are affected by light and air exchange. Too much UV light can potentially degrade trichomes and terpenes. So that's something that you really want to make sure you pay attention to, as well as that air exchange. You do need some of the proper air exchange to remove the chlorophyll and to break that down, but at the same time, too much air exchange and too high of humidity and temperature with that air exchange can affect those terpenes. It's kind of a balance that you have to figure out as you're going through and seeing how that bud cures for you. Thicker, denser bud is definitely going to take a little bit longer, as where airy, more sparse bud is going to dry quicker. These are factors that you learn as you grow, and over time, you'll figure it out and dial it in for your particular setup and the cultivars that you're growing. And this isn't all just bro science, there's some science that actually backs this. A study published found that high temperatures can lead to increased volatility and evaporation of essential oils and terpenes in plants. Now, the homie Mr. Grow had a great Garden Talk episode last month, I believe it was, with Dr. Justice that really broke down some crucial scientific information about drying and curing and flavonoids and terpenes as a whole. No one big discussion was the drying time. You need to be patient. It takes at least 2 weeks before you're going to see the flower actually change within that terpene content and have a different chemical reaction in there. So you need patience. Just is what it is. Unless you're doing something like freeze drying or I guess water curing. I doubt you're going to do water curing, but if you're going to do these other methods, then maybe it'd be different. But we're talking traditional drying, you need at least 2 weeks solid. Proper storage conditions are actually a massive factor too. Of course, you would think that this is a no-brainer, but a lot of people feel like putting their stuff into a turkey bag and leaving it open at events is not going to be an issue with the terpenes. But science disagrees. And it boils down to it, when you're dealing with a proper storage container, something that's stainless steel or something even like a Grove bag potentially could be your go-to method. You need to be able to have something that can maintain that storage temperature and humidity and those overall environmental conditions if you're going to get the best results for your flower. Another thing that she mentioned was the ethylene levels. Now, this is something a lot of people don't pay attention to, but overall the oxygen and CO2 levels within the drying area can play a factor as well. Understanding and monitoring these levels can be very important overall for your garden, but definitely when it comes to drying and curing. And another thing she touched on was making sure that you're researching new techniques and staying hip to science, because things do evolve, and sometimes practices that we've done in the past have come out to be bro science and have come out to be totally wrong. I've even had episodes where I've gone over things that I thought were fact because they worked for me, but it was anecdotal evidence and it was not even anything that was worth mentioning.
I'm kind of retarded.
Science comes out and debunks some of these things, and science comes out and teaches us new things. So don't ever be afraid to learn and adapt. What you feel may work now may be debunked later and there's a better option. We'll see. But also, if it works good for you, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, when it boils down to it, good bud is subjective. But I am very tired of seeing all this purple, triked out, no smelling, basic commercial dispo bud everywhere. And the fact that it's making it into the homegrown community, it's disheartening. Well, if you're sick of seeing all that boof, we can do something about it as home growers and as consumers, and it's time to do our part. And how do we do that? Well, growing great herb, learning what it takes. It's not just all about the looks and the THC. Looks are a very important factor, but that's like being with a woman or a person that beautiful, gorgeous, but has zero personality and sucks in bed. So what's the point? What's the point? Now, if your biggest issue has been just crappy genetics, well, go check out Seedsman. They're a partner of the channel and they got that fire. Use discount code CLtv at checkout to save yourself a little bit of money. But when it boils down to it, if you want better herb, well, that's on you.
Are you a grower? Are you tired of lugging around too many bottles? Is it too expensive? Is it so confusing? Tired of reading feed charts? Well, guess what? There is an easier way. Introducing the Stash Blend. You can now get your bag of Stash Blend premium additives that you can add to your garden using just about any base nutrients. Go to stashblend.com and get your order today.